Hey, welcome to Chi Alpha. I'm so glad that you're here. Hey, one quick announcement for this week is that there is a worship night on Thursday at 8 p.m. at Central Assembly. I'm super excited. It's just going to be a night of music for 1 hour. We're going to be in the sanctuary, wear your mask. We're going to be able to spread out and just have a great time together as a community. Okay, opener question for today is, what is a nickname that you have, and how did you get said nickname? I have a few old nicknames, but I'll go with the one that everybody knows, which is just Mom. Everybody, for the most part, in Chi Alpha calls me Mom. And I was thinking about it. I think that it started partially because I would meet with someone and we would have like deep talks, and she eventually started to call those mom talks. And so then I think that it just kind of snowballed from there, and now it's just a part of who I am, which I love it. I've totally just embraced it.
Mommy! Mama! Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
Okay, so this week we're going to be looking at one of the most well-known teachings of Jesus, and that is the Lord's Prayer. It's also sometimes called the Our Father prayer because that's just how the prayer starts, with Our Father. And so today we're just going to kind of be discussing the idea of prayer, which is something that I think that most of us probably have some sort of notion that it's a good thing and maybe we should do it. But we don't always know like what to do when we go to pray. And so with Jesus, he's going to teach his disciples specifically like what to do when they pray. And so I think it's going to just be a really fun thing to look at together. So when Jesus starts to talk about prayer and how to pray, he starts off by saying some of the things to not do when you pray. He uses two different examples of what not to do. The different common people groups from that day are the Jews and the Romans, and Jesus is going to take an example of what not to do from both of them. So the first is an example from the Jewish religion, and Jesus outright of the gate says, "Don't be like those hypocrites." Super strong name calling here, Jesus.
Watch it, jerk. Shut up, idiot. Moron. Scab eater. Butt sniffer. Pus licker. Fart smeller.
But Jesus isn't calling these people mean names just like a 12-year-old kid. A hypocrite is actually a term that comes from Greek stage performers. And it would be this idea that they would wear all these different kinds of masks in order to play different characters. And so Jesus is saying Jewish religious people from that day prayed at 3 set times during the day. And for those who wanted their prayers to be seen by other people so that they could look good, they could make sure that they were in a public space during those times. And so Jesus here isn't saying like don't ever pray in public or so that people can see you, but he's cautioning them that if that's the reason behind your prayer is to just put on this good prayer mask and play that part for a moment, he's saying like be cautious of doing that. Don't do prayer just for that reason. And then the second bad example that he gives is from the Gentiles, which in that area would be the Roman people, whose religion was that of Greek mythology. So we're talking like gods and goddesses. And when the Romans would address a Greek god, they would use lots and lots of titles, like ridiculous amounts of things. And they did this as well with their human authority. So for them, that would be Caesar, who they also thought of as a god. And so they would go on and on with these titles. It was like they wanted to use all of these different things to be able to butter up the god so that they could get what they wanted.
Theme song guy.
Oh yeah! He's the sovereign Lord of the nation. He's the hippest cat in creation. He's the Alpha, the
Jesus is saying, you also don't have to do that thing. You don't have to butter me up. You don't have to use all these titles in order to get what you want. God already knows and he cares about your needs. So Jesus here also, it can be a little bit confusing. He's not saying like you have to pray super short prayers, because it can kind of seem like he's maybe saying that. But what he's saying is, that you don't have to use all of these different titles in order to get God's attention. So Jesus, we know, prayed really short prayers at times, like in the Our Father prayer or the Lord's Prayer. But sometimes he also prayed all night long. So it's not like it's the set amount of time. It's just the way that we're going to address God is different. Jesus is saying, you don't have to do all those things in order to pray. And then he, in contrast, says, okay, now this is how you're going to pray. And he starts off by saying, Our Father, or the word in Aramaic is Abba, or another word for that would be like Daddy or Father God. Okay, I'm about to like nerd out here because there is huge significance in Jesus saying Abba, in using that term. And the biggest significance here is that he's speaking in Aramaic. In the Jewish religion, in Jewish synagogues, when there was reading of the scriptures or prayer, it's all done in Hebrew, which is not the language that people were speaking back then. So when Jesus starts by saying, you get to say, like, God or our Father, he's praying in the common language of that day. And that idea of like you can approach God with common language, with like the way that you talk to a friend or to your dad, that would have been mind-blowing.
What is it, Mom? What is it?
For the Jewish people, for the disciples sitting there. And so that is amazing. And it's so exciting. When it comes to how to pray, Jesus also is just using a really basic form from Jewish prayers, which again, people prayed all the time back then. So it was very common to them. And that very basic prayer structure we're going to see is first an invocation, which is just asking God for help, and then followed by petitions or requests. And in the Lord's Prayer, there's the invocation, which is the Our Father who is in heaven, and then is followed by 6 petitions, which you're going to talk about in your small groups. And this, again, is just a very common way to pray for those Jewish listeners and for the disciples of the day. And so there's so much here for us to learn about how to pray. And even though the Lord's Prayer is super short, I was just blown away this week as I learned and studied and read about all that's here. So I am just so excited for us to be able to learn together this week about what we can learn from the way Jesus teaches us to pray. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great small group and a great discussion, and I will see you next week.